Okay, kids, it's time for another episode of the Fueled by Weird podcast, the only podcast taking place from Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm Chris Daly, and today I have the pleasure of chatting with CL Zeno. Mr. Zeno, how's it going today?
Pretty good, pretty good. Happy to be here. Love the show. Long time listener. First time on the show.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, and first and most definitely not the last, because you're welcome back anytime you want to come back.
Awesome.
All right, man. So, since you're a longtime listener, you know how this works. The first thing we like to do is kick things off with an icebreaker question. So, today's icebreaker question: if you were forced to participate in a flash dance song, or I already messed it up. If you were forced to participate in a flash dance, what song would you perform to and why?
Um, um, let's go with that's a good one. Hungry Like the Wolf by Duran Duran.
Ah,
Just
nice.
because of the energy and the vibes, and I feel like if if people in a flash dance have to muster up all the energy to give a performance that's super out of place socially, I feel like that song can really get the job done in terms of like hyping people up. Um,
Nice.
so yeah, that would probably be my first pick on the
Very
spot.
cool. Very cool. I think for me, I would pick. So there's this new song I've been kind of into, who my friend Jen introduced me to it. Shout out to Jen. It's a song called Loud by the Home Team. Um, it's kind of a real kind of a groovy, catchy song, and there's not they do a dance in the song that I kind of started to adapt and do all the time, and it's not anything super complicated. It's super simple, and I'm kind of a super simple guy, so that would probably be the one that I would dance to. And I'll if you've never heard the song, I'll make sure to share it on social media. It's so good. It's weird because it's not a normal genre of music I'm into. Like we were just talking
Yeah,
about before the show, I'm into some pretty heavy stuff, but this is completely 180 from that. But it's a fun song, and
yeah.
it's
Sam, I think with that said, even if I saw somebody just like by themselves dancing to "Hot to Go" by Chapel Roan, I'd probably just join in. I feel like it has staying power. It's like our generation's YMCA.
oh
It's
for
so
sure.
fun.
For sure. I actually, other than the fact I have a teenage daughter who's super big into Chapel Roan, and I might be wrong, and she won't listen to this anyway, so it won't matter if I'm wrong or not. But one of my favorite podcasters was wearing a Little Caesars shirt, and across it was the Little Caesars mascot driving a moped, and above him it said HOTTOGO, and I was like, what the hell is that? Like, why are you wearing the shirt? And so I had to
It's
look it
getting
up, and I'm
cold.
like,
Yeah,
okay, I get it. I get it.
so
I get
silly.
it. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. All right, dude. So, fueled by weird. It's kind of all the stuff that you comes together, your hobbies, your interests, all the stuff you're into come together to make you who you are. So I kind of want to know what are some of the things that you're into?
Um, I definitely have more of like a classic nerd diet in terms of my interests.
Okay.
So one of my earliest I'd say like hyperfixations when I was a kid was just like the the style and the attitudes of rock and roll. So like getting into Alice Cooper and like King Diamond and just the like what the heck is this aspect of like rock stars was something I really latched on to as like something that you could find yourself in some of these characters that they were portraying like in like the stage shows and stuff. And then comics really came into my life in a big way at a young age. So I got to kind of um, learn to communicate through visual storytelling when I was drawing at a young age as well. So that like I was exposed to like the understanding comics at like 8 years old. So
Oh
like I
wow.
just like I was just like kind of like unpacking the medium as I was like becoming a fan of it and like
Yeah.
really just becoming a student as much as I could of the art and the writing. And then I'd say the other one is Dungeons and Dragons is another big influence. I was a Boy Scout for a long time. I was an Eagle Scout,
Yeah, me
and
too.
yeah,
Me too.
so I'm on my Boy Scout camp staff, and
Nice.
we were up there for 2, 3 months at a time, and We only really left like on Sundays once a week to go get food or go see a movie or something. Um, and so we spent a lot of time up there, and it was whether it was music or movies, or I played Dungeons and Dragons for the first time up there when I was like 17, 18.
That's
And
awesome.
I've been a dungeon master ever since. So it's been 12 years of playing Dungeons and Dragons, and
That's
along the
awesome.
way, it's a group storytelling process as much as it is a tabletop game. So,
Yeah, for sure. And I was gonna say, of course, we have if you didn't mention it, we'd have to mention D&D because I see all the D&D books on your shelf.
yep.
That's quite impressive. That's awesome. Yeah, I
Yeah,
and that's cool that you're a DM because I also had my first experience with D&D around 17, 18, but then I haven't really played since then until maybe like a month ago. So it was kind of cool to finally get back into it because the hard part around where I am is everybody wants to play, but nobody wants to DM. At least that's what I found, but I'm kind of
yeah,
an introvert and I have a hard time going out and talking to people sometimes. So maybe there are people that want to DM and I just haven't met them yet, but at
yeah,
least in my circle, I guess most everyone wants to play. They don't want to DM. And so I've always been told if you can't find a DM, you should just DM. So I'm like, okay, so I'm a writer, I'm a storyteller. I've tried to look into it. It's for me, it's been harder. It's been easier said than done, but maybe I'm just trying too hard. You know what I mean?
yeah. I think as a writer, like, and as a dungeon master, you kind of have to do like a lot of homework and bring a lot to to the conversation, like to the table. Like you can have a bunch of like really strong themes in your D&D campaign or in your comic, and like a lot of that is
Yeah.
informed by like the media that you research, the late night Wikipedia deep dives and stuff, like going through lore for D&D or like going through, whatever themes you want in your book. So, um, yeah, that's definitely like a huge part of it is like the time investment to like want to tell a story. Um, with other people and collaborate in that way. So yeah, I definitely hear you. Being a dungeon master is kind of like a lifestyle, in my opinion, to
For
where
sure.
you're constantly, how do I tell a new story? How do I incorporate, new, gods and uh, like modern spins on like old mythology? Like how do I retell these stories in
Yeah,
my own unique way? So yeah, that's constantly something that I'm dealing with. I definitely relate to that.
that's cool. And that's really awesome as well that you got introduced to all that really heavy music when you were little. I know when I was a little younger, I only was introduced to stuff like Eric Clapton and Richard Marx and the Eagles and Rod Stewart, stuff like
Yeah.
that. And then I remember the first time I heard anything heavier, it was all like this one like oldie station that we'd always listen to that I'm like really, is this like all the music out there? And then I went to my buddy's house and heard Metallica for the first time and I was like, what is this?
Yeah, this is
And
electric and energetic
yeah,
and
and like it was crazy because like that was what was inside the house, like Rod Stewart and stuff like that, and people similar genre. But I get into like my dad's truck and we'd hear like Meatloaf and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, this is kind of a weird mix of music that my
yeah.
parents listened to. And then like I said, I heard Metallica, and then going to high school, carpooling with buddies, I'd hear like Blink 182 and The Offspring. I'm like, where is all this? This music is incredible. What have I been missing out on?
Yeah, that's definitely a big theme in Drunk Mom. So like like my dad listened to like ZZ Top, like George Thorogood and the Detroit Destroyers, like Leonard Skinner and stuff.
Yeah,
And so I really had to like lean on like my cool uncle who had a lot cooler
nice.
music. So like
Nice.
he was definitely feeding me like Duran Duran. He took me to Amoeba Records in Los Angeles on my 13th birthday. He's like, here's the Clash's first three albums. Here's X-Ray Specs. Here's like all this homework, and it's like cool punk homework. It's not like
Yeah,
actual homework. Here's Devo's greatest hits and Devo's greatest misses, and you get into the weird quirkiness beyond Whip It. So,
yeah,
um, yeah, it was just so fun to learn the new, uh, you know, seem new to me, like the new experiences in
yeah,
music because music just kind of resonates. It's like the universal language, right? So
sure.
it was cool to learn those new languages. And so in Drunk Mom, her 10-year-old son kind of goes through that same musical experience. So like she's a product of the 90s, not like I am with, like 90s cartoons and stuff like
Oh
that, but
yeah, same.
she was, she was going to graduating high school, going to college around that time. So she's very into Bikini Kill, L7, anything Riot Girl. And so like yes, she's, much older now, has a son, and has a full-time job and stuff, but she still has all the CDs and stuff. So her son listens to a CD player, so he's rocking Incubus and stuff that
Nice.
maybe a kid nowadays wouldn't listen to. But
Oh, for
I, I
sure.
I feel like we all kind of inherit our parents' music tastes in that way. So
To a point, I think, yeah. I think in my case, my kids, what's cool is when they were younger, they did listen to a lot of the stuff I listened to. Like, I remember my oldest daughter, I'd be listening to Kill Switch Engage, and she'd be in the back, like, singing along, or like Ailstorm, pirate metal. I don't know if you've heard of
yeah,
Ailstorm.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah,
Oh, yeah. She used to sing along to a couple of their songs in the backseat while we were driving around too. But now she's found her own taste in music. And my youngest, she's kind of still in that discovery phase of stuff she likes. Right now it's really anything Five Nights at Freddy's related. Um, but yeah, they've totally migrated off of my taste in music. They're kind of just getting into their own. I know my youngest, when she was really little, she liked Blink 182 a lot. She liked Panic at the Disco a whole bunch. But she's kind of like finding her whole new thing now,
yeah,
which is kind of sad, but in the same time, it's cool that they're finding their own personality like that.
yeah. I'd say like once they're old enough, expose them to like Willy's Wonderland.
Oh,
Um,
my youngest daughter, she loves Willy's Wonderland because it's so similar to Five Nights at Freddy's.
it's so crazy. Like
Yeah, it's so wild.
yeah, I haven't seen the Five Nights at Freddy movie, but like I was aware that it came out and
Yeah,
that all the kids were seeing it, and I was happy to see that because it's like it's almost like a age appropriate horror, which is
yeah,
cool.
yeah,
Um, because like age appropriate horror has always been cool. Like whether it's like Gremlins or like something that's like it's PG, like Ghostbusters is kind of horror.
yeah,
So like yeah, it's always been cool. Yeah, even if it's based on a video game and uh, millennials may think Five Nights at Freddy is cringe or whatever. Like it's not cringe to the newer generation. Like it's maybe their first experience at something that's like a horror video game. They don't have
yeah.
another reference, and so that's new and exciting for them. So I'm all about it. I love um, exposing kids to horror that is age appropriate because like horror is unlike any other really genre. Like I did a horror comic. I think it was earlier this year. Phantasmagoria. It's a horror anthology. It's got 9 stories in it, and um, the the project lead reached out and was like, "Hey, like, do you want to contribute? Do you have a horror comic that you could work on?" And I was like, "I don't know. Like, horrors always frightened me. Like, I was always like, my sister was really big into horror, and whether it's like kind of like I'd say like metal that has like horror aesthetics or horror movies or going to the mazes and stuff where they jump out and scare you. They were
Yeah.
always pushing me into that stuff, and I was like, I was always so afraid as a kid. Um, and doing the horror comic, it was based off my D&D campaign, so it was a little bit more comfortable for me. It was
Okay.
a cool experience because like I didn't even know that like I artistically had some of these, weird and like intrusive thought type things in my art that I wanted to get out. And that's just
Yeah.
not something that I'd ever really gone through. Like obviously like I've watched a lot of horror movies, so I have kind of that language and like that frame of reference to like go off of. But
Yeah.
like I never saw myself as like doing a horror comic. And so, yeah, horror is super important, especially for kids because they get to like have a voice and have a personality and self-express and like be introspective and find kind of what makes them tick artistically, which is really
Yeah.
cool.
And I'm not a huge fan of horror myself, like everybody else in my house is though. And
Yeah.
but I watched the Five Nights at Freddy's movies, and it was It was pretty good for, for a PG-13 horror movie, a lot of jump scares and stuff like that. And my daughter got
Yeah.
a huge kick out of it. But speaking as a millennial, having, a younger kid who wants to watch it basically all the time, it does get a little bit cringe after a while. And I think it's just because it's not my typical genre of stuff to watch. And so like
Yeah.
usually just let it play and I'll do something else. But yeah, it's not bad. And it's weird because like she's super into Five Nights at Freddy's movies. She's into Willy's Wonderland, and like she has her certain horror movies she likes. Like she'll like most of the Chucky movies. She really likes Bride of Chucky a lot.
Yeah.
Um, Friday the 13th movie she's pretty okay with, but like Beetlejuice she doesn't like because the part
Oh,
where Alec Baldwin turns his face inside out. Yeah,
yeah.
she's like, nope, that's it for me. And I'm like, okay, that's a random one to not like, but okay,
Yeah.
that's whatever. Like
Yeah, I
you
think
said,
it
everyone kind of has their own thing.
yeah, I think it's gonna be a cult classic. It reminds me of like the fun silliness of Killer Clowns from Outer Space
Yeah, oh,
to
yeah.
where it's just super wacky and
Yep.
original and just fun.
Yeah, and plus like the whole time I watch Five Nights at Freddy's, I just mock um holy cap, I can't think of his name all of a sudden. Matthew Lillard. I just
Yeah.
pretend he's Stu from Scream all the time during that movie, so it makes it a lot more fun for me.
Oh man. It's been so good watching him do everything he's doing with Beetle and Grimm too. If the
Dude,
he has
he's
a
so
Yeah, his Faster Purple Worm Kill Kill show is so silly. Where they play like one shot D&D, but it's
yeah,
like super lopsided. So like the villains are
yeah,
gonna win, and so the heroes are
yeah,
just like on a suicide mission.
yeah, yeah.
It's so silly. It's so
Dude,
fun.
he's so incredible. He's so
Yeah.
awesome. Such a cool person. All right, man. So, I kind of want to go back a little bit. So, you're a writer, you're an artist, colorer, letterer, publisher. You got so many things. You wear so many hats, which is really cool because you don't see that a lot with people. Um, Out of all of these things, which one of these was kind of the one that you started with? Because I'm guessing that you didn't jump into being a writer and an artist at the same time. So, which one did you start out at?
I started off with penciling. That
Okay.
was my first love was expressing myself through the medium of pencils. I had like the How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way by John Buscema and Stan Lee, and I definitely that was my Bible for a long time growing up. And I mean, I very recently started to like really get into inking as a separate discipline. I feel like there's a common pitfall of like, oh, I can draw, and drawing is both penciling and inking. Like
Yeah.
I'm doing my final outlines for my pencils or whatever, and it's all cleaned up, so therefore I have inked, and it's like, okay, well, there's a lot of more dimensions to inking, I think, that I previously realized. I never really studied it as much as I studied penciling at a young
Yeah.
age. So like, I feel like doing Avondra's Theory 1, 2, uh, Tales of Goop, and Ghost of Wimbledon have really allowed me to uh, exponentially kind of learn digital inking, digital coloring, and I feel like I'm ready to do Drunk Mom with like a new set of skills that I for people that don't know, I had started it back in 2017. I started writing all 12 issues, and they're fully written now. So when I was doing the pencils and inks for issue one, I not only learned that traditional inking, although I'm in love with that whole traditional process, was not really going to be feasible with my anxiety. That's just not
Good.
going to be the media that I need to work in, and I had to pivot to digital. But also it was 2020, and so when I was starting to like table and stuff with like small prints and stuff like that, doing commission sketches, um, like COVID hit, so like my entire momentum was kind of killed. And so working on Drunk Mom at the time felt like my momentum was killed for that project as well. And so I kind of pivoted towards collaborating on anthologies, which I'm really glad I did because now, 4 years later, I'm able to I still have these 12 issues of script, and I have this awesome story that's really personal to me, and I'm really excited to get it out. And now I have again 4 comics under my belt, so this will be my 5th comic,
Nice.
and I'm super excited to work on it. It's the first one that I've worked on completely by myself. Like you said, I'm doing from writing to lettering. Um, I've been drawing my whole life, and I do fancy myself a writer first, just because I think it's probably my strongest discipline, is my writing. Um, on my deployment, I learned that writing is a very good therapeutic outlet for me, and I find myself very prolific at writing. I don't really find it to be challenging at all. It's just purely creative process for me. I don't really see it as like work at all. So.
That's cool. And that reminds me, I wanted to mention that I saw that you were in the Navy for 8 years, and I want to thank you for your service, sir. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I joined in 2013 and got out in 2021. I was a nuclear electrician
That's awesome.
on a the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower and
Nice.
the George H.W. Bush. So
Very cool.
yeah, lots of good friends in the Navy. I came up with Drunk Mom while I was in the Navy. Wrote a lot of it to kind of, I guess, survive that experience. It
Sure.
definitely wasn't the best place for me, but it obviously allowed me to get a lot of experience, a lot of on-the-job training, and qualifications and things like that, and skills that I still use for my full-time job now. So,
Right on. So before we get any further, I wanted to kind of just go back a little bit. So what was it that initially inspired you to become a writer slash artist?
I mean, so being obsessed with comics and drawing and stuff, you know, I always wanted to be either like an animator or a comic artist or something related to those stories because like th those stories do mean so much to us,
Mhm.
as fans. I feel like every kid, watches cartoons or reads a comic book or something,
Yeah.
something that is arguably targeted at kids, but like means so much more and has that staying power. And so, as an adult, people still say, "Oh, I loved He-Man as a kid, or I loved Transformers, or whatever it is." And those stories mean so much to us because it is kind of a modern mythology to where you get these morality tales that kind of teach us, lessons that we do need to learn at a young age. And so, like, that importance has always fascinated me. And so, like, I always try to incorporate those themes in my Dungeons and Dragons campaigns of like good versus evil and morality, and that is kind of baked into the alignment system, right, in D&D.
Yeah.
Like the lawful and chaotic, good versus evil. That's always present in fantasy. Um, and you know science fiction has its own unique themes. Like Star Wars is a big influence on me for sure, and like incorporating those themes into writing has always fascinated me. Like I love the creative writing that we got in school, learning about Joseph Campbell's hero's journey and like deconstructing um, mythologies and Beowulf and the Monkey King and like just all those classic tales and like why are they effective? Why do they work? Why do people resonate with them? Why do we continue to tell these stories throughout centuries of human history? And like that aspect of writing has always fascinated me. And so yeah, when I was on my deployment in 2016, I started writing. It was basically just fan fiction. And then like at the end of the deployment, I was just like, what am I doing? Like like I don't want to write fan fiction that nobody's ever gonna see. Like I want to
Yeah.
tell a story that, I would want to read
Yeah.
and that would be creatively fulfilling for me. And if people uh read what I have to say about my journey and my struggles and it resonates with somebody, I mean that would be a great way to connect with people. And so like
Yeah.
I've go into conventions, you're able to tell, your favorite comic writer or like your favorite voice actor or whoever it is, like, hey, like this Star Trek really meant a lot to me, or reading Guardians of the Galaxy comics really meant a lot to me, and you get to have that social experience, but like obviously they've never met you, and it's like that parasocial thing that that connection is innately human, and so
Oh yeah.
indie comics. getting into that has been an incredibly rewarding experience because of those interactions. Like I was at NecoCon, um, it was like earlier this month, and there was a mom and two kids that came up, and they say, "Hey, my son who's not here, it's our third child. Um, he's autistic, and he's read the Evandris theory like 100 times over. Like he's obsessed with it. He loves it." And I was like, "Well, awesome! I have issue two. This is the first convention, and I have the second issue." And they're like, "Oh, of course! Um, of course we'll get one." Uh, and he came back the next day. He wasn't at the convention the first day, came back the second day, and he's like, "Oh my God, when is issue three coming out?" And I was like, this, I would have never expected anybody to care about, my comic at all, let alone have it, be a huge part of anybody's life, at any stage of their life. So,
Yeah,
um,
and it's, like you said, it's a really cool feeling because I was lucky enough to talk to Kevin Smith one time, and Kevin Smith, for the people that know me, Kevin Smith has been a huge influence on my life, and some of the stuff he's done has introduced me to some people that are going to be lifelong friends, and because of that,
yeah,
and it was actually something that got me and my dad a lot closer, just watching Kevin Smith movies and stuff like that, and so I was able to tell him like, hey man, like I'm sure you hear this all the time, but your work has meant the world to me and it means so much. So I really wanted to thank you. And I'm sure, being him, he's probably heard it thousands, hundreds, millions of times, but he still like genuinely like really, it seems like no matter how many times you hear it, it still always kind of just means the same thing to you every time. And, kind of like with you, where, when I make this podcast, like I do it just because I like doing it. I don't necessarily do it so people will be like, hey, I really love your show, blah, blah, blah. But, it's always nice when people are like, hey, like, you're a really great interviewer, or hey, I really
yeah.
like listening to your show. It really means a lot. Like, people don't think about how much that really means, like to go to your favorite creator, whether it's a big wig like Kevin Smith, or just an indie comics person, or even a podcaster, how much it means to go to them and say, hey, like your stuff really means a lot to me, or I really enjoy listening, or I really like that story, whatever. It really does make a difference, and it's something that doesn't take that much to do. Just you could just shoot them a quick note, or just like, hey, like I really appreciate your stuff, and it really goes a long way.
Yeah, that's totally true. Like I feel like the indie comics community has really embraced me in a way that I never expected.
It's cool.
The being in Boy Scouts, being on camp staff, like that was a community. There was lots of
Yeah.
camaraderie. It's a leadership laboratory with, tons of boys, and, boys get to, have fun, and also, have a shared set of values, and have a good sense of community. And like that community is still very strong today. And I know I still have dozens and dozens of friends that I can reach out to at any time. Even though, I haven't been on staff in 12 years. Being in the Navy, there's that camaraderie. You're stuck on a ship for 6, 7 months for a deployment, and
Yeah.
same thing there. Like that shared experience bonds you in a way that makes friendships that last a lifetime.
Yep.
And I didn't expect the community building to be not only so important for like the success of your Kickstarter campaign or whatever it is, but like for me personally, like I didn't know that I was missing a sense of community until everybody started saying, "Hey, check out CL Zeno's work. Let's do a cross promotion. Let's talk. Let's chat. We're friends. Let's collaborate. Let's hang out." Like I didn't know that I was missing all that.
Yeah.
And it's been super rewarding. And I feel like as creators, we can kind of like get in a silo and get very focused, and like let me focus on the script, let me focus on writing and drawing, and getting the comic out there. And then when it's time to be vulnerable and come out and talk, and it's like, you know, you just spent all this time alone, and people, you share your work, and they're like, "Hey, this is cool, I dig it," and it's an exercise in vulnerability that's like kind of
Oh
maybe
yeah.
hard for introverts or
Oh
creators.
yeah.
Um, but but it is so important. That community
Yeah.
is one of the innately human things that we all need. So
For sure. And yeah, I'm not going to name names because I'm going to forget people and I don't want anyone to feel left out, but the comics community is there I've met so many cool people in the comics community, and you
Yep.
know, they're they're just really great people. And so it's really cool to, see them come together to help people, get funded and, get eyes on other people's work. And this it's so cool how they can all come together. It's really cool. And, you're right. Getting your work out there to get read is incredibly vulnerable because I know for me, I've written for a really long time, and there's only been probably a handful of people that's read some of my earliest writing just because it's hard to put yourself out there. It's only been, the last few years where, I used to write this online web series with a friend of mine who we're not friends anymore, but I still kind of been trying to just revamp it and rewrite it and re-release it just out on I just release it for free on the internet just because it's just prose writing basically, but
Yeah.
it's hard to get it out there because you're not sure if anyone will even read it if it just sits in the void forever. um but yeah, it's incredibly hard, but when you get it out there, or even like a video podcast like this, because for a long time I've been a podcaster for like 10 years, and forever it had just been audio only, and that was fine because it's just my voice, whatever. But getting out there on camera like this at first was so mortifying to me. I'm like, I can't be on camera. Like, what the hell? But so it's hard to get yourself out there and to be judged or complimented or whatever. But at the end of the day, just getting out there and doing it is pretty rewarding.
Yeah, yeah, and it is like a leap of faith for sure.
Oh,
Like
for sure.
you don't know. I feel like I was always kind of holding on to Drunk Mom in some respect of like, oh, I want it to be perfect. I don't want it to be, criticized. Like it's my
Oh
magnum
yeah.
opus. Like I want to do it right. But like there's no perfection in art.
Nope.
That's unrealistic. It's unattainable. It's not something that you should judge yourself on. If I'm receiving any criticism, I'm doing it wrong. That's just inherently not true.
Yeah,
Um, and so it can be hard to convince yourself that creatively, as a new artist, that you should put yourself out there. So,
for
um,
sure.
but I've had nothing but love from the indie comics community, and I definitely. Starting with Drunk Mom, this is issue one of a 12 issue series, like I said, and it's coming out whether I've got 30 backers or whether it grows over time to much much more than that.
Nice.
So it's coming out. It's a story that's inside of me, and it's got to come out because that's just who I am. So
Very cool. All right, so drunk mom, let's get into it. So, for those that don't know, let's talk a little bit about what drunk mom is about.
all right, Drunk Mom is the story of a single mother who's a recovering alcoholic like me, and she finds herself fighting crime with her intern, Craig, and Monica and Craig get in way over their heads very quickly, fighting the criminal underworld of the Twin Cities of Minnesota. So they, it's full of heart. It's a like day in the life story because like um, the main tension in the book is kind of the elephant in the room. She's a single parent. She probably shouldn't be putting her life on the line out there, fighting crime as a superhero. But she does believe in making her community safer, making the world a better place, fighting for what she believes is right. So, I mean, yeah, it is hard to fight for what you think is right, but at the end of the day, she does convince herself that it's worth it and that no one else maybe is gonna do what needs to get done. So she's taken again a leap of faith to do it, and those themes are kind of ever present in the story to where she's a reluctant hero. She doesn't really want to put herself out there. She thinks she should probably play it safe, but at the end of the day, she's living a unfulfilling life, working a corporate job at a bank, and so like that tension, I think, is something that a lot of people relate to. A lot of people have stuff that they want to do, but stuff that they have to do always takes priority, and so
Yeah.
that's that's a very like existential theme in Drunk Mom. And so like there are superheroics going on, right? Like it's very much inspired by some of my favorite comics, like Spider-Man, to where he can juggle the Sinister Six and save New York, and save the multiverse, but he's letting down MJ because he doesn't want to start a family, or he can't be on time for dinner with Aunt May, right? Like he's letting down the people that he has in his life to sacrifice for, the greater good or whatever. And so
Yeah.
like that like classic dual identity, your civilian identity and your superhero identity kind of pulling on you and pulling you into just two separate ways, is the main theme of Drunk Mom. And so the entire thesis is like, is this character, is Monica the single mom, is it worth her being a superhero? And you only really get to answer that, whether it's worth it or not, by the end of the series.
Nice. So you had mentioned that, she's a recovering alcoholic like yourself. You mentioned that you wrote a good majority of the scripts while you were deployed. Um, where did you pull inspiration for the story of Drunk Mom? Is it stuff that you pulled from real life? Is it stuff you pulled from other places?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think it's worth noting the timeline as well. So, I was writing in 2017. I was definitely actively drinking heavily in 2017. Um, and I had just gone on deployment in 2017. I started the year recently, having a broken off engagement, so I was definitely leading into writing Drunk Mom as like an emotional therapeutic process for me,
Sure.
as well as leaning on alcoholism as a crutch. And so I was kind of like almost writing my own sobriety into existence in a big way, which is like very, uh, kind of hard to think about.
Yeah.
Um, but I had a lot of, I'll say like, experiences with alcoholism external to myself, in my life, like my biological mom. And so like my parents are divorced, if I'm even saying my biological mom right. And like she, was an active alcoholic and had, some, periods where she was in recovery and stuff. My high school girlfriend, was a recovering, alcoholic, and so like her sobriety was very important to her. And at an early age, I had kind of this exposure to those themes, and it wasn't, it wasn't a comic book. It was real life, right? It wasn't Demon in a Bottle, Tony Stark. It was my mom. It was my girlfriend at the time. So
Yeah.
those things leave an impression on you. They teach you values about sobriety and about addiction, that maybe aren't how things are seen, in in the public eye. And you know, it's a different perspective that I got from an early age about sobriety. And I stopped drinking in 2019, and uh, my sobriety means something personal to me that I think is imprinted in Drunk Mom. And so when just to go through Monica, the character's sobriety journey. I mean, she's drinking with her, husband. They have a child. Uh, the the drinking is unfortunately taking a toll on the entire family, and her husband can't really uh, be there for her and her child in the way that he, needs to be, and she and the child need him to be. And so when she realizes that, the real villain is the alcoholism, and she leaves her husband to protect her son, I mean, that's a big decision.
Yeah.
And a lot of this stuff happens in flashback. It's not it's more of backstory than like, hey, this is the tone of Drunk Mom.
Sure.
It's just like
Yeah.
she's dealing with like, hey, I'm sober because I have to be, because I have to take care of my son. Um, and that space where she exists in her sobriety with her son is such a beautiful, happy, you know, cheerful existence. And a lot of people can see, I think, the divorce and the addiction as these forces, that could make the tone of the story very dark. And I think to counter that with like productively cheerful, fun, happy superhero story is important, because like my
Sure.
sobriety is not something that I think about and get sad about, like, oh, woe is me. I have addictive personality or tendencies or whatever, and I had a drinking problem 5 years ago. Like, no, like I that was a hard time in my life, and alcohol probably helped me cope with it at the time. And now I don't need to do that, and now I have, I think, a little bit more tools to protect myself from maybe some of those circumstances, getting myself like in those things in the future. And I'm in therapy, and I have a lot of tools and a lot of support network to help me going forward, and I don't need that crutch anymore. And my life is fun and happy and beautiful and full of love and joy. And so like that's kind of one of the things I want to address in Drunk Mom is like yes, there are these heavy, mature personal themes, but it's so fun and it's so silly, and there's tons of music lyrics and jokes, and there's colorful costumes and crime fighting, and it's everything that I love about comics with real characterization that is in there. And so, um, I've said this before, but if anybody's seen like the DC Arrowverse shows on the CW,
Yeah,
they have a really successful recipe of like heart, heroics, and humor. And like, yeah, they take a moment to get real, and then they kind of move past the hard times with a couple jokes, like we all do, and they get on to the the superhero we're all here to see. So, um, yeah, that's a lot of the inspiration for Drunk Mom is those superhero stories that are multifaceted.
very cool. That's awesome, man. So you were talking about how, it's a 12 issue series is what your plan is. Is that kind of like a hard stop at 12? If you happen to get to the 12, do you have ideas for more stories? Like how do you see it playing out?
Um, it's definitely not a hard stop. It's a minimum. I will be doing the 12 issue series. There is a sequel series that I am excited about. I am not allowing myself to write it because I want to get the story that I have in me out there in the world
That's a
before I
good
start
call.
writing Drunk Mom 2 or Drunk Moms. And there's a spin-off series with the Hallrom character, who's like the Iron Man character. That I definitely am interested in doing. I'm kind of chewing on that idea. But yeah, it's definitely my most personal comic I'll probably ever write. It's very it means a lot to me, and everyone that knows me knows how much Drunk Mom means to me. Uh, I've gotten people make Drunk Mom Funko Pops for me, like custom
Really? That's
Drunk Mom
cool.
Funko, or like one of my friends has like a knitting business. She crochets like stuffed animals and stuff, and she made an order for me, and then also made me a little tiny Monica Drunk Mom. And
That's
so like
cool.
it's just there's so many self-inserts in the story that the story is a lot of me, and people see that. And so if you're connecting with anything in Drunk Mom, I think you're having that same relationship where, we're connecting via the medium of comics because I'm putting my heart and soul into the story. So
That's awesome, man. That's really cool. So it's on Kickstarter right now. It goes until December 8th. And I'll make sure to put the links in the show notes so people can get to it. And I'll make sure we share it out on social media to help get the word out. Let's talk about the Kickstarter for a little bit. Do you have any cool unlockables or any stretch goals or what's some of the things you got with the Kickstarter going on?
yeah, we've got a couple. The ones to highlight, I think, now are the digital indie deluxe bundle. So the indie comic community is obviously very supportive, and they say, hey, if you want to sweeten the deal for your backers, put an issue of my comic in there for free.
Yeah,
You can do that, and that's got tons of great books by a lot of close friends in there. And so like if you're very price conscious, as a lot of us are now, and you're only, hey, I'm only able to do digital. Um, and not able to pay for shipping and stuff like that. So if you're in that camp, there might maybe a deluxe version of that for you that has a lot of bang for your buck. Um, there's the creator bundle where if you're new to me and my comics, I can catch you up. Avandris 1 and 2, I think, are $5 each, but the creator bundle has all my comics and it's like $5 off. So I'm giving you a comic in there for free. I'm not trying to rip anybody off, just trying to have you join the fun. And so I want to lower that barrier to entry for people. Um, and as you get into the higher tiers, I would say I have a lot of fun doing the campaign. There are some like silly things I think that I've done in the past, like Avondra's Theory. I did like a D&D tier where like I'll 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 DM a one shot with you or something, right? And somebody actually got it, and I was just like totally shocked because I've seen people express their personality on Kickstarter via like silly tiers. Like, hey, if you give me $1,000, I'll fly you out to a convention, and it's like it's kind of silly. Or like the 666 tier, like we'll summon the devil if you buy this comic. Like it's just like there's no other way to like unless they watch the video and like see you and hear you and kind of get a sense of your personality. There's not really a way to convey that on the
Yeah.
platform. And so some people get really creative with the tiers. And so like one of them, there's like friendship bracelets on one of the tiers to where like I'll make a friendship bracelet with Monica and your name and it'll say like BFFs and stuff because like that's the kind of stuff that she would do growing up. So like it's
Yeah.
very silly.
That's
Um, yeah, so yeah, if you're new, I'd say uh definitely get on board with like a creator bundle. The signed bundles are really cool too. So we're like I know like I collect comics. As you can see behind me, I got tons of comics.
yeah.
And um like if you have a signed copy, sometimes you don't really want to put your hands on that one, take it out of the bag and board, uh, you know, and read that copy. So the signed copies are only more because you're getting a signed copy and a reading copy. So if you get both covers, I mean, you get four comics. It's not just uh, charging you extra just for the signature. That's not what it is. So
Yeah.
uh, yeah, the campaign page is really fun. There's lots of the video is on there, which might be repetitive if you're listening to the podcast, but um, it's got like the character bios. There's a link in Monica's to her Spotify playlist. So she speaks in a lot of
Nice.
uh, song lyrics, like kind of like I do. Like I reference song lyrics all the time. And so every lyric that she's ever said in any of the scripts are in one playlist. So you can kind of get a sense of like where her music's coming from on
That's
there. So
awesome.
yeah, there's lots of fun to explore if you haven't checked it out.
That's cool. Yeah, it's cool when creators take the time to do that extra little bit. Like a playlist. That's really fun. And those digital comic packs that we collect, comics from other creators and distribute them. That those are always really fun to do. I remember I noticed on your Kickstarter, one of the ones in particular was Bulletproof Chicken from
Yeah,
John Westhoff and Part-Time
Mustaf. Yeah.
Comics. That I love that series so much. It's so good. And John is such a cool guy. So shout out to John. But yeah, that's very cool. And people, if you for that one alone is worth the price of admission for sure because that series is so great.
Yeah.
um so what other things coming up after this can you talk about that you want to kind of announce right now?
So the 2025 will have fulfillment for Drunk Mom number one. Be working on Phantasmagoria number two, Tales of Goop, a follow-up to that. So we get more Vampire Frog, which is always great.
Very cool.
Um, uh, Probably another Drunk Mom two. So we're full steam ahead on Drunk Mom. We may be getting to Vondra's Theory number three in the near future. Maybe not 2025. We'll see. We've got some conventions coming up for the local community. Let me just make sure I get my dates right. I have my everything on my calendar. If I don't have my calendar, it doesn't exist.
No, I
But
hear you.
uh, all right. So the Pretlow Library Show in Chesapeake is on December 7th. That's put on by my good friend Corey Bland, who's on uh, Evangelist Theory number two. Let's see. Yes Fest at ODU in Norfolk on January 13th. The Norfolk Original Indie Comic Expo on February 24th. Hampton Comic Con on February 22nd. So yeah, the year is almost over. I can't believe it's over. It went so fast. And
I know.
next year is coming just as fast. So you gotta be
It's
ready for it.
true. Absolutely. All right, so I like to usually end these things with giving you a chance to give some advice to fellow creatives out there. So, what's some advice you'd give to us fellow creators?
So we've already said that your first comic will not be perfect, and your mainstream professional Marvel DC comic will also not be perfect if you
Yeah.
get there. Uh, so yeah, don't let that stop you from getting started, getting out there and getting part of the community. That community building is so integral to success, not just uh, vocationally and professionally, but also personally. Um, and then I'd say always being like an eternal student, going back to basics. Even if like I've read tons of art books as a kid. I read like Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain by Betty Edwards, whether it was like how to draw anime manga, how to draw cutting edge comics or whatever. Like you can always go back to art reference and art studying and continue to up your skills um, your entire time you're creating. That's definitely a must. And then in that process, I would say your eye for uh, like analyzing or critiquing art and understanding art will not always progress at the same rate as your skill for creating art. So don't let that be a deterrence. I mean, imposter syndrome is very real, but just understand that as you learn to um, analyze art, your skills will follow. It is a process, so just kind of trust the process.
Trust the process, never stop learning. That's good advice.
Yeah.
All right, man. So where can we keep up to date with stuff from you? So when can we find out when stuff's coming?
All right. My website is clzeno.com. The best place to keep up with all of the news uh, related to Drunk Mom and other projects would be my newsletter, signing up for the newsletter. And I'm on tons of socials. I think notably Blue Sky's blowing up in a big way. Its user count's doubled in like the last 90 days or whatever.
Yeah.
In 2024, and then even again the last month or two have seen a huge user growth. It's got like over 15 million users. And that art community has been really good from what I've
Yeah.
seen. I've got
Mhm.
tons of comic creators on there that I love following on other platforms. I'm active on Threads, Instagram, Facebook. I've got Twitter and TikTok and all that. So if you're on socials, I'd be glad to network with you and follow each other's creative journeys and just be fans and nerds together. So
Very cool. All right, and for me, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Fueled by Weird. Fueledbyweird at gmail.com. Send me an email. Let's chit chat about all sorts of nerdy stuff, maybe even come on the show. I want to thank Polygon Horizon. Their song Pizza Force is the song I use for the show. Go check them out on Bandcamp. They're a great band, and Pizza Force is an awesome song. You can find the show on YouTube, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find me on the Spotlight Media GA app, along with the rest of the Stay Weird Network shows, the Nerdy Man Room show with Hassel and Monster, Hassel's Review, and Big Rob's House of Entertainment and No Chinese Food. Now, the Stay Weird Network, it's a brand new network dedicated to bringing some awesome back to the internet. Check us out on social media at Stay Weird Media on Instagram and Stay Weird Network on Instagram, Stay Weird Network on YouTube. Send us an email at stayweirdnetwork@gmail.com. And I'd like to thank the Zone Collectibles in Tifton, Georgia, your one-stop shop for comics, collectibles, and so much more. Now, if you like the show, please leave a review and tell your friends because word of mouth is my friend. And make sure you check out Drunk Mom on Kickstarter right now. It goes until December 8th, so make sure you got a couple weeks left, so make sure you go check it out. Make sure you tell your friends. And again, we'll put the link in the description of the show so you guys can find it. And last but definitely not least, remember kids, life's too short to be normal, so stay weird. Mr. Zeno, thanks so much for joining me this morning.
it's been a pleasure.